What do you do when you don't know exactly how you're going to approach a particular painting? For whatever reason, I was intimidated by my reference, even though I have used this reference before in a pencil drawing, and I had a pretty good idea of how to draw it. But now that I'm painting it, it's all of a sudden like I forgot that I did anything else at all. So I was a little bit intimidated by this reference for things like, what am I going to do with her hair? I don't want to paint every strand of hair, but I want it to be recognizable for what it is. And what am I going to do about her blouse? I don't want to get into the pattern of that blouse. I don't want to get into copying a photo. I want to get into the spirit of the photo and the spirit of the person's character without copying every single nuance or detail or whatever that's in this photo. So I had to consider how I'm going to use my reference without overdoing it. And then it's not just that I'm trying to avoid details. I'm just trying to avoid copying photographs because there seems to be something less creative in it. And even taking the idea of using the reference as reference. That if you look at my other videos in the body of my work, I don't stick to the color necessarily. I use it generally, but I don't try to copy it color for color. I try to, like, in some of the highlights in that you see in the reference photo, I try to use colors like blue mixed in with white to make cool highlights. More so that even though I see it generally in this picture, I try to exaggerate it in the final painting, and use my imagination and push things and not copy a photograph. So that's what I'm trying to do. So, and those are the things that I'm thinking about. Even as I don't know exactly how I'm going to approach this, I kind of just throw myself at it and try to try to work these things in. And one of the ways I do it is by doing what I'm doing now, spending a lot of time on the drawing and not moving on from the drawing until I feel satisfied with how the drawing is looking. And then what I do is I open, like even as I'm doing now, I open a layer and I lower the opacity and I make corrections. Later on, when I add the color, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add the color. I'm going to open up a layer, uh, change the opacity, lower the opacity, and begin to add the muted color, and then build the color in its richness, and also introduce different temperatures and cooler colors as I go along. But I'm building this up slowly because I don't know exactly uh, how I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm thinking it through as I'm painting, and maybe it's not such a good idea. But some artists or artists in general, when you're working on an illustration, it's always a good idea to do thumbnails, to do uh, color rendering, a quick color sketch of what you intend to do, and so forth. But when you're painting from life, you don't really do that. You just kind of observe and begin to paint what you observe. And even though I'm painting from a photograph, I'm acting as if I'm painting from life. Now I don't have to do that. I can go ahead and do the other route, but I don't always want to do that. Sometimes this is just fun to do it this way. And as difficult as it is, as you're hearing me making it seem, which it is, um, part of the fun is fighting through the difficulties. Now it's frustrating when it doesn't work out, and I'm not, I realize that there might be a better way of doing it, but this way is fun. For what is, if it was an illustration, yeah, I would be more careful. Yeah, I would go ahead and do all the preliminaries, but that's not the case here. This is something that is done just for me. When you look at different artists, I can remember reading about how Norman Rockwell, when he practiced his painting, I mean, he did his illustrations and he had a very, very careful and deliberate way of doing his illustrations. He worked on a charcoal drawing and, well, he worked on sketches, thumbnails, found his idea, found his models, gathered his photo reference. Earlier on, he worked directly from the model, but later on, he began to use the camera, and he gathered his photo reference, and then begin by making a completed charcoal drawing, then a color, move on from there, color sketch. He might sketch certain parts and try to resolve certain parts of the painting and so forth. But when he was practicing and working for himself, just for the sake of painting, he would go ahead and not even use brushes. He would take the shingles from shingles are a blind. I'm sorry, a blind from one of those blinds that you have in the window, and take one of them and use that to apply the paint to the canvas because he wanted to feel as if he can paint with anything. And this is something that I don't know if I read it in his in one of the many. Well, I read it in one of the many books that I have on him. I don't know if it's My Adventures as an Illustrator, or which is an autobiography of Norman Rockwell, or one of the other books where it discusses his methods and so forth. I have a book called Rockwell on Rockwell, where he takes all of his classes from the famous artist school that he taught, and it was collected and put into a book that is very difficult to find. But I found a copy, and I have several other books. So in one of them, I read that as far as how he practiced, as far as when he does things for himself. So it's different from when he did his illustrations. And this to me is practice. This to me, I'm doing this to get used to Rebel 4, the program that's here that I'm using, and to just practice my drawing skills and my painting skills and so forth, and and you know just to meet the challenge and to not be intimidated by this painting or by this reference. So that's basically what I'm doing here. I'm throwing in as best as I can this thing that this thing that's intimidating me. I'm just trying to go ahead and think it through as I'm painting, and taking the attitude that I'm working. I'm doing this as if I'm working from life, and I'm not going through any preliminaries or anything like that. Although you can consider the pencil drawing that I did before as a preliminary, even though I did it like months ago, but still I've used this image, so I'm familiar with it. So I'm going to continue to paint, and I'm going to play some music, hopefully to entertain you as I paint. And then I'll have some more to say when I close up, before I close up, rather. All right, so I've come a long way for not knowing exactly how I'm going to approach this by just building it up slowly, kind of sneaking up on things, just using the layers and decreasing the opacity in the layers and just with muted colors, just building up the color and so forth. I've gotten to a place where I feel a little bit more confident about what it is I'm doing. And with the hair, now the best thing, I guess the best thing or the best analogy to the way I've been painting this is by comparing it to the way a sculptor uses clay, where you push and mold your clay, you take add clay, subtract clay, and shape your sculpture till you get what you want. And that's basically how I'm approaching this painting, by doing the same thing, and throughout every area of the painting, I'm doing it the same way. I did the hair. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do the hair, but I started with the big shape, and I broke it down into smaller shapes, and so forth, and to the point where I got it to, okay, I didn't have to draw every strand, but I kind of represented as many as I needed to give the impression that these are locks that she has. And now I'm approaching the shirt, her blouse, the same way. I'm not trying to put down the patterns and then paint around the patterns. I'm trying to paint what's underneath those or just that the shirt, putting the local color of her blouse, and then going back into it, opening up another layer, and then adding the patterns, uh, or adding an impression of the pattern. Because again, like I did the hair, I'm not interested in painting these patterns. That's not what my painting is about. My painting is about her face, but I wanted to put down some representation of this pattern to look convincing enough, so that if you were to compare the shirt, her shirt with the painting, it's not exact. But say you never, say you've seen this particular blouse at a store or something, and then you come across this painting and you say, hey, that's the blouse. Because even though it's not exact, it's enough of a representation that that you would recognize it for what it is. It looks very similar, or if you didn't have it in front of you, it would look exactly like the blouse that you saw at some other point. So, and that's all I'm doing. That's all I'm going for. I don't need to. I don't need to copy the photo. The photo is not something that's going to travel with this painting, and people will compare it to, and it's not so unusual. I've seen paintings done from life, and I've seen there were magnificent paintings, but I've seen photos of the person, and even though that person is well represented in the painting, the artist got his character. It isn't exact. There's an exaggeration in some of the features. There's an exaggeration for the sake of the painting, or there's some other things that the artist does that he or she takes license with. So, and that's what I'm doing. I'm basically, again, not trying to copy the photo, but trying to do a representation of this person, who happens to be my wife, and something that's recognizable even without looking at this photo. It's recognizable as her, and so that's all I want. So, in general, I was happy with this painting, and looking at it now, I can see some things that I would like to have done differently, or I can go back and change. And they're simple drawing, like her shoulders, especially on the left side of the canvas. That shoulder's dipping down too much, but it's not terrible. Um, and so I'm not overly concerned about that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this painting. This is the this video of this painting. This is the finished painting here. If you want to support my channel, please visit my Patreon page. I'll leave the link right here. You can see it, as well as if you like this video, press like, or click on like, and subscribe as well to my channel to see more videos. I have a longer version where I explain more in detail of the methods I use to complete this painting on Patreon if you would like to join me there. And again, the link is right here. All right, so we'll see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye.